They say the NFL is fair, that every team has a shot. But when it comes to the Raiders, that promise gets blurry. Really blurry. This team wasn't just hit with tough losses. They were targeted on national television with millions watching. The plays were real. The rules? Twisted. The flags? Thrown late, or not at all. But here's what they don't expect you to know. Sometimes, the NFL tried to break the Raiders and still lost. This isn't just another bad call video. It's a deep dive into 10 moments when the league tried to control the outcome and got exposed doing it. You'll learn about mysterious penalties that erased touchdowns, secret meetings, and even a folded index card used to end a comeback. Yes, seriously, a piece of paper decided a game. You'll hear about rivalries that became vendettas, rule changes that seem suspiciously well-timed, and decisions that still haunt the league today. These aren't rumors. They're real plays, real calls, and real consequences. And if you think you know all the dirty tricks pulled against the Raiders, think again. Some of the stories we're about to show you never made the headlines, but they should have. So sit back, because this one goes deep. Welcome to History of Raiders, the channel where we uncover the truth the NFL doesn't want you to remember. If you love hard-hitting football stories with grit, betrayal, and revenge, make sure to subscribe so you never miss what's next. Number 1. The 2021 roughing the passer call versus the Giants. The Raiders were locked in a gritty battle against the New York Giants during the 2021 season. It was late in the game, and tensions were high. The silver and black defense had been applying pressure all night, and finally, they got the hit they were looking for. A textbook sack, clean, powerful, and exactly what any defensive coach would praise. But then, a yellow flag hit the field. Roughing the passer. The crowd froze. The replay rolled across screens. It wasn't helmet to helmet. It wasn't late. It wasn't low. The defensive end had wrapped up the quarterback around the waist and taken him down with control. No malicious hit. No excessive force. No foul. At least not by the rule book. Commentators in the booth were baffled. One even said, "That's just football." They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Even fans of the opposing team took to social media, admitting the call was ridiculous. The quarterback had barely been touched compared to what we've seen in other games, yet the Raiders got penalized. It wasn't just about yards. It shifted momentum. Instead of forcing a punt, the Giants got a fresh set of downs and the energy to push forward. The game could have easily slipped away right there. That's what these kinds of calls do. They don't just change stats, they change the rhythm. They punish one team while rewarding another, unfairly tilting the balance. But this is the Raiders we're talking about. They didn't fold. They didn't break down. The defense regrouped, locked in, and made sure that the Giants didn't take full advantage. The offense came back out on the next drive and answered. That's the kind of resilience the Raiders are known for, the kind that lives in the DNA of the franchise. When flags fly unfairly, they don't cry foul. They hit harder. They fight back. They make a statement, not by yelling at the refs, but by finishing the game the right way. This was just one of many moments where the world saw it live. A flag that didn't make sense, a call that seemed to come out of nowhere, and a Raiders team that refused to go down easy. Number 2. The 2020 phantom holding penalty versus the Chargers. It was Week 9 of the 2020 NFL season. The Raiders were on the road in Los Angeles, facing their longtime division rivals, the Chargers. The energy was high, and so was the tension. The Raiders had just executed a perfect red zone play. Quarterback Derek Carr dropped back, found his man in the end zone, and hit him with a laser. Touchdown, or so it seemed. Just as the Raiders began to celebrate, a yellow flag hit the field. The call? Offensive holding. The touchdown was wiped out. Fans watching on live TV were confused. The broadcast quickly cut to the replay. And there it was. Nothing. No tug, no grab, no hands outside the frame. The lineman barely even touched the defender. Analysts in the booth hesitated. One of them simply said, "I don't see anything there." What made it worse was how clean the play looked in real time. The offensive line had done its job. The pass was quick. The ball was out before pressure even came close. No reason for a holding call, especially not one that changes the scoreboard. But the damage was done. The Raiders lost 6 crucial points. Momentum in football is real. A touchdown there would have put the Raiders ahead and shifted pressure onto the Chargers. Instead, they were forced to settle for a field goal. That 3-point swing might seem small, but it shook the rhythm. You could see it on the Raiders' sideline, heads down, coaches barking, fans on Twitter fuming. The Chargers, meanwhile, gained confidence. They moved the ball well in the second quarter and started to pull ahead. But the Raiders weren't finished. Despite the questionable call and the lost touchdown, they came back strong in the second half. Their defense tightened up. Carr played smart, avoiding mistakes. The team rallied, not just against the Chargers, but against the feeling that the league was stacked against them. The 2020 phantom holding call became yet another mark on a long list of strange penalties against the Raiders. But like many times before, it didn't stop them. It just fired them up.
Number 3. The 2017 Index Card Game versus Cowboys. It was December 17, 2017. The Raiders were locked in a tight, high-stakes game against the Dallas Cowboys. The score was tied 17-17 in the fourth quarter. Just minutes remained. Both teams were fighting for playoff hopes. Every inch of field mattered. And then came the moment fans still talk about, not for great football, but for what felt like a joke. The Cowboys were facing a crucial fourth down. They handed the ball off to their fullback, and he surged forward into a wall of defenders. The refs called for a measurement. The chains came out. The ball was placed. The decision hung in the air. And then something strange happened. Referee Gene Steratore pulled an index card, yes, a literal office supply, from his pocket. He folded it and slid it between the football and the first down marker. He paused, looked at the space, then suddenly signaled, "First down, Cowboys." The stadium roared, but it wasn't just cheers. There was confusion. Even on live TV, commentators didn't know how to react. Former players, fans, and analysts stared in disbelief. No one had ever seen that. The NFL rulebook made no mention of using an index card to measure first downs. There was no guideline, no protocol. It was completely improvised. The decision extended Dallas's drive. That very drive led to the game-winning field goal. The Raiders never got the ball back. Just like that, their playoff hopes were crushed. After the game, questions flooded the league. Was it even legal? Why not just eyeball the spot like usual? Why introduce a tool that isn't part of the official process? Steratore defended himself, saying the card was only used to reaffirm what he already saw. But to most people watching, it looked like the ref made the call because of the card, not in spite of it. For Raider fans, this became one of the most bizarre and frustrating moments in modern NFL history. Not just because the team lost, but because the loss came from a call that felt more like a magic trick than football officiating. Number 4, the 2016 interference no call versus Texans playoffs. The 2016 AFC wildcard game was supposed to be a fresh start for the Raiders. After years of rebuilding, they finally made it back to the playoffs. But instead of a fair fight, what they got was a painful reminder of how calls, or lack thereof, can change everything. It was early in the third quarter. The Raiders were trailing, but still in striking distance. On a critical third down, wide receiver Michael Crabtree broke free on a crossing route. He had a step on the defender. The pass came in clean until the Texans' corner grabbed Crabtree's arm and slowed him down mid-route. The contact was clear. It was before the ball arrived, and everyone watching knew what it was. Defensive pass interference. Except the refs didn't throw a flag. No penalty, no first down, no chance to keep the drive alive. The Raiders were forced to punt. The Texans took advantage, ate up clock, and built their lead. What made the moment worse was the broadcast. Analysts in the booth paused the game footage. They circled the defender's hand. They replayed the grab in slow motion. One even said, "That's textbook pass interference. I don't know what the officials are looking at." It was that obvious. This wasn't just a missed call. It was a momentum killer. The Raiders were playing with a backup quarterback, and every opportunity mattered. That drive could have put them within one score. Instead, it slipped away, quietly and unfairly. Even fans from other teams reacted online. Social media lit up with disbelief. That was a joke. NFL refs doing the Raiders dirty again. And sadly, this wasn't the first time people had said that. Moments like this stick. They don't go away after the game ends. Raider Nation remembers them not because they're sore losers, but because these moments happen too often, and the consequences are too big. The 2016 no call wasn't just a bad officiating error. It was another notch in the long list of questionable calls that always seemed to go one way, against the silver and black. Number 5, the 2002 AFC Championship reversal. It was January 19th, 2002. Snow fell heavily in Foxborough as the Raiders faced the Patriots in the AFC Divisional Playoff game. The weather was brutal. Visibility was low. The stakes were high sky. This was football at its rawest, and it was about to become one of the most controversial moments in NFL history. Late in the fourth quarter, the Raiders were leading 13-10. The Patriots were driving downfield with under 2 minutes to go. Every snap was critical. Then came the play that changed everything. Quarterback Tom Brady dropped back. He was under pressure. Raiders cornerback Charles Woodson came flying in and knocked the ball loose. Linebacker Greg Bikert recovered it, and the Raiders celebrated what looked like the game-sealing turnover. Everyone watching thought the same thing: fumble. Even the commentators called it in real time. The ball was knocked loose before Brady's arm started moving forward. Simple. The kind of play that ends playoff dreams. The Raiders believed they had punched their ticket to the AFC Championship, but the officials paused the game. They announced they were reviewing the play. That's when the term tuck rule was introduced to millions of confused fans. According to the rule at the time, if a quarterback's arm was moving forward to tuck the ball back into his body, it could be ruled an incomplete pass, even if he clearly lost control. It was a technicality, a vague, rarely used rule that most fans had never even heard of. After several minutes of review, the referee emerged from the replay booth and stunned the entire stadium. The call was overturned. Incomplete pass. The Patriots retained possession. The Raiders were stunned. The Patriots kept the drive alive, eventually tying the game with a field goal. They won in overtime. Tom Brady would go on to win his first Super Bowl that season. The Patriots' dynasty began right there, in that snow-covered game, the same game that many Raiders fans believe was stolen from them. The anger from that moment didn't fade. Players and coaches on the Raiders sideline couldn't believe it. Woodson later said it was the worst call he had ever seen. Bikert, who had recovered the fumble, looked heartbroken as the officials overturned what should have been the Raiders' victory. Even years later, the controversy remained a stain on NFL history. Many former players, analysts, and fans continued to debate the play. It wasn't just about one bad call. It symbolized something larger, a feeling that the NFL's rules could be bent, twisted, or interpreted in ways that always seemed to go against the Raiders. What made the moment worse was that the NFL eventually eliminated the tuck rule entirely. In 2013, the league voted to remove it from the rulebook, essentially admitting it was flawed. But for the Raiders, that change came too late. One of their best chances at another Super Bowl appearance had vanished in the snow, not because they were outplayed, but because of a rule that shouldn't have existed in the first place.
Number 6, the 1993 overturned INT versus the Packers. It was Week 10 of the 1993 NFL season. The Raiders were battling the Green Bay Packers in a tightly contested matchup at the LA Coliseum. Emotions were high. Both teams needed a win to stay in the playoff race. The game had been physical, with strong defensive plays and a tug-of-war scoreboard. Then, it happened. The moment that would leave Raiders fans stunned and furious. Late in the third quarter, with the Packers threatening to score, Green Bay quarterback Brett Favre dropped back to pass. Under pressure, he released a hurried throw over the middle. Raiders defensive back Terry McDaniel read it perfectly. He cut in front of the receiver, leapt forward, and secured the interception. The crowd roared, flags waved, players sprinted to the end zone in celebration. It was a game-changing play. Or so they thought. As McDaniel returned the pick, the referees gathered. A long, confusing huddle followed. No one knew what was being discussed. Fans waited. Coaches paced the sidelines. The CBS broadcast cut to replays, which clearly showed McDaniel catching the ball cleanly. No bobble, no contact that would justify interference, no penalty flag had been thrown. Just a textbook interception. But when the refs broke their huddle, the head official turned on his mic and stunned everyone. The ruling on the field is incomplete pass. The stadium erupted, this time in boos. What had just happened? No explanation was given, no penalty announced. No replay challenge was possible at the time, as the NFL hadn't yet implemented the modern review system. What fans saw on television and in the stadium was simple. The Raiders had made a clean pick, but somehow the interception was taken away. The Packers retained possession. On that same drive, Favre led Green Bay to a touchdown. Instead of Raiders' ball with momentum, it became a 7-point swing in favor of the Packers. Raiders evidence contradicted it. The rest of the game felt different. The wind had been knocked out of the Raiders' sails. Though they continued to fight, the energy had clearly shifted. Green Bay controlled the pace and ultimately came out on top. But that one moment, the reversal of a clean interception, stuck in everyone's minds. Years later, Raiders fans still talk about it. It's one of those moments where something was taken away without reason. No rulebook explanation, no justification, just a decision made behind stripes, and it cost the Raiders big. This wasn't just a bad call. It felt like something more, something deliberate. And it added fuel to the belief that the NFL, time and again, had no problem flipping the script when the silver and black were involved. Number 7. The 1990 holding on fourth down stop versus the Chiefs. It was 1990. The Raiders were playing the Kansas City Chiefs. This was a heated rivalry, as always. The stadium was loud. Both teams were battling hard, and the game was tight. Every yard mattered. Every call could change the outcome. Late in the second half, the Chiefs were pushing down the field. They were in Raiders territory. It was fourth down. The Raiders' defense lined up strong. The tension was thick. The Chiefs snapped the ball, and the Raiders shut it down. A clean stop. The defensive line broke through and crushed the play. Fans erupted. It looked like the game had turned. The Raiders' sideline started celebrating. They had done everything right. But then, just a moment later, a yellow flag came flying out, late, almost as if someone had changed their mind. The call? Defensive holding. No one could believe it. Not the players, not the coaches, not even the broadcasters. The replay aired seconds later. It was hard to see any holding at all. The supposed defender barely touched the receiver. It looked like incidental contact, if even that. The refs didn't huddle long. the call stood. First down, Chiefs. They got a fresh set of downs. The drive stayed alive. Anger spread through the crowd. The Raiders' defense had done their job. They had earned that stop, but the officials took it away with a call that looked paper-thin. Raiders fans weren't new to this feeling. It wasn't the first time they'd seen a flag like this, and sadly, it wouldn't be the last. The Chiefs took advantage of the penalty and moved closer to the end zone. The announcers kept revisiting the call, replay after replay. No one could find solid contact. It became one of those moments that made fans question everything. Was it bad luck? Was it bias? Or just another day being the Raiders? The Raiders didn't fold, though. They stayed aggressive. They pushed back, play after play. You could feel the energy shift again, even after that awful flag. The silver and black had been burned, but they didn't let it break them. This moment became one of the many in a long line of questionable calls that never quite added up. And even though the refs tried to swing the game, the Raiders refused to let the story end there.
8. The 1984 ineligible receiver flag versus the Dolphins. It was Week 3 of the 1984 NFL season. The Raiders were facing off against the Miami Dolphins. Both teams were strong that year. The Dolphins had Dan Marino under center. The Raiders were just 2 seasons removed from a Super Bowl win. The stakes were high. Midway through the second quarter, the Raiders called a smart trick play. It was designed to confuse the defense. A lineman would report as eligible and catch a short pass. Plays like this weren't common, but they were legal if the player clearly reported to the officials before the snap. And that's exactly what happened. The Raiders' offensive lineman walked over to the ref and said he was reporting as eligible. The ref gave a slight nod. Everything looked good. The ball was snapped. The Dolphins didn't see it coming. The lineman slipped into open space, caught the pass, and ran it in for a touchdown. The Raiders' sideline exploded. It was clean, it was clever, it was 6 points. Until it wasn't. Out came the flag. The referee announced that the touchdown was being called back. He said the player had not properly reported as eligible. Confusion broke out immediately. The Raiders players were stunned. The broadcast replay showed the lineman clearly speaking to the official before the play. He even paused to make sure the ref acknowledged him. Fans watching at home were just as confused. The commentators questioned the call. One of them even said, "That's going to be a tough one to explain." The Raiders lost the touchdown. They had to settle for a field goal. The momentum of the drive was gone. After the game, the Raiders coaching staff asked the league for clarification. A few days later, the NFL quietly admitted that the call had been wrong. The lineman had properly reported as eligible. The touchdown should have counted. But that didn't change the scoreboard. It didn't undo the lost points or the momentum shift. Once again, the Raiders had to swallow a mistake they didn't make. And fans were left wondering, how does this keep happening to the silver and black? 9. The 1977 Holy Roller rule change. It was September 10, 1978. The Raiders were facing the San Diego Chargers. The game was nearly over, and the Raiders were trailing. Only 10 seconds remained on the clock. The ball was on the Chargers' 14-yard line. The pressure was intense. Quarterback Ken Stabler took the snap. The pocket collapsed almost instantly. He scrambled forward, but with defenders closing in, he made a split-second decision. He entered the ball forward toward the goal line. Some say he did it on purpose. The ball rolled ahead. Running back Pete Benezak dove after it, but couldn't gain control. He hit it forward again. Now the ball was at the goal line. Tight end Dave Casper chased it down, bobbled it, and finally fell on it in the end zone. Touchdown, Raiders. The stadium erupted. The Chargers were furious. Their fans stood stunned. The referees allowed the play. According to the rules at the time, there was no specific restriction against advancing a fumble like that in the final moments. It was legal, barely. But people questioned it immediately. Was it really a fumble? Or was it a forward pass disguised as a fumble? The Raiders, especially Stabler, always maintained it was all instinct, survival mode, but others didn't buy it. Commentators called it the most bizarre ending they'd ever seen. The NFL quickly responded. By the next season, they introduced a rule that banned advancing a fumble in the last 2 minutes of the game or on 4th down, unless it's recovered by the player who lost it. This became known as the Holy Roller Rule. The timing felt too perfect. To some, it looked like the league changed the rules just to prevent the Raiders from doing something like that ever again. Raider fans saw it as another example of how the league always tried to box them in after they found a loophole. Even today, the play is legendary. It was chaotic, creative, and absolutely controversial. The Chargers lost in a way no one could have predicted. The Raiders once again found a way to win, bending the rules without breaking them. 10. The 1972 Immaculate Reception setup. It was December 23, 1972, the AFC divisional playoff between the Oakland Raiders and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The clock was down to 22 seconds. The Raiders were winning 7-6. The Steelers had one last chance. On 4th and 10 from their own 40-yard line, quarterback Terry Bradshaw dropped back, facing pressure from the Raiders' fierce defense. Then came the play. Bradshaw fired the ball downfield toward running back Frenchie Fuqua. As the ball arrived, Raiders safety Jack Tatum collided with Fuqua. The ball ricocheted through the air. Suddenly, Franco Harris appeared out of nowhere, scooped the ball just inches above the turf, and ran it in for a touchdown. The crowd erupted. Steeler fans screamed in disbelief, but the Raiders stood stunned. The question on everyone's mind: did the ball hit Fuqua or Tatum first? Back then, NFL rules stated that if the ball bounced off an offensive player directly to another offensive player, it was an incomplete pass, unless a defender touched it in between. That was the heart of the controversy. Replays were inconclusive. The angles were limited. The referees huddled for over 5 minutes. No one could say for sure who touched it last. And yet, the touchdown was ruled good. The Steelers won 13-7. What made it worse was that there was no video review system. The referees had no monitor, no ability to slow down the footage. They had only their memory and judgment to rely on, and their decision stood. To this day, no clear footage has surfaced. The NFL's archives show only a few camera angles, none of them definitive. Some say the league quietly suppressed better footage. Others believe the officials caved under the noise of the home crowd and the pressure of the moment. Raiders players and coaches insisted the ball hit Fuqua and never touched Tatum. If that's true, the catch was illegal. But the ruling gave birth to one of the most debated plays in football history, the so-called Immaculate Reception. While it's celebrated in Pittsburgh as legend, for Raiders fans, it was the beginning of a long and bitter pattern. The NFL's biggest moments always seemed to go against them. And this was just the start. Through decades of questionable calls, reversed rulings, and bizarre officiating, one thing remained constant: the Raiders never stopped fighting. These moments didn't break them, they shaped their legacy. The Silver and Black became more than just a team. They became the league's ultimate outsiders. Even when the NFL seemed to stack the deck against them, the Raiders refused to back down. If you remember any of these moments, or know others we missed, drop them in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to History of Raiders for more.